Okay, so let's have a p tag here, and here let's just write something. This is an olive tree, something like that. So we have this is supposed to be inside the div, so let's just cut this and put it in between the opening and closing div tag here. Yes, so we have these three inside the div. So the div is like a card, and inside the card you can have different elements inside the card. So we save that, and let's just style our div and give the background color something like this, and let's give it a width of, let's say, 100 pieces. So let's have this. Okay, so this is quite big. The image looks really big, but yeah, this is what a div looks like. But the image looks really big, really big. Okay, so we will just make do with that for now. But let me remove the image so that we can better get. I don't want to start styling the image because it's going to take us more into CSS, which I don't want us to dive into right now. Okay, so just something like this. This is our div. Maybe we should just increase the width of our div. Let's just say width auto. Let's give it auto width. So it will just take up as many space as possible that is available to it. Something like that. Right. So we can have another div here. So let's just copy this div and then paste it here. So we can have another div here. We can also have another div here. So we have three divs: first div, second div, and third div. Save, and let's check. So you see that this div automatically will create a line break, and it will create a space. Yeah. Create a line break and create a space for themselves. So this is how div works. So they are like containers that you can use to store things inside your website, and it makes your website work easy for you. So from now going forward, you're going to be working with div, not just putting your p tag, your h tag on a plain website like that. You need to make sure you have them in a container where you are able to manage them. You are able to work with them, right? You manage them in such a way that you give them different names, and you can style them the way you want. You can style them the way you feel is the best way to style them. Okay, so we will just move on. I'll just show us briefly how we can use how we can add some float elements to your div and see how that looks like. Some alignment to your div and see how it looks like. Okay. So like I say, we're just going to be diving into CSS little by little, and then hopefully in the next few days we should fully start writing CSS. Okay. So let's here we can, let me show something. So here we see that we have these divs, and they are just taking their spaces, but what if we want this div to be after this one and then this one to come here, like have them horizontally aligned, not vertically aligned? How do we do that? So here, I will just, what happened? Okay. Here, I will just add something we call display, and I will say flex. So this is just CSS, and I will set the flex direction. I will set it to row. I'll set it to row. Okay. So let's refresh. So now you can see that there's no gap again. We have this everything together, but they are still vertical. Now, this is because we have the width to be auto here. So we're saying that the width of each of this is auto. So this is where we can then introduce classes in CSS. This is when we can introduce classes in CSS. Now, classes will help us to give each of these div a different name in such a way that we can then assign width to them. Now, because our website is 100% width, so when you say auto, you are saying that each of these divs should carry the auto width that is available to, which is 100%, right? So if our website is 100%, that means each of these div is carrying the width of 100% because we set the width property to auto here. So for us to be able to set the width property to divide it by 3, that's 100% by 3, that should be, we can use 33. So if we use 33% and we add 33% to each of these, we should be able to get each of these stay within 33%, 33%, 33%, and that would be 99%, having little space for them to share for the borders. Yeah. So, but if we try to do this here now, 33%. Now, this is what we have. We have that here is saying 33%. We're supposed to have another 33%, another 33% here. But because our div is we are just styling just one div here. So we are putting all these div, the 3 div, we are putting them together and we are giving them just 33%. So for us to be able to get 33% for each of these div, that means we need to give these div classes. We need to give them a name and say, okay, your name is so, and you are to get 33% from the 100%. All right? Your name is so, and you are to get 33% from the 100%. Same for the last div. Now, guys, please pay attention. This can be a bit technical, but just pay attention, you will get it, right? Just pay attention. Now, looking at this, our code, I wish I can draw something. Let me get paint. Let me get paint so that I can drive on some points, Okay. So here, I will just have this and say, this is our div. Now, inside this div, we're supposed to have opening and closing div for, let's say this is another div, yeah? Opening and closing. This is another div. Opening and closing. This is another div. Opening and closing tag of each div. So we have 1 div, 2, 3, and then we'll have the overall div, which is the 4, their parent div. Pay good attention, guys. Now, in this div, we can actually say that this is the parent of these three other div. So meaning, if this is the parent of these three other div, these other three div will dance to the tune of this guy here. These other divs will dance to the tune of these guys. So if we have this div as a parent div here, we can tell this div that anything that enters here, we want these things to be arranged horizontally, not vertically, as we have seen there. So now we want it to be somewhat like this. Somewhat like this. So this is div 1, div 2, and div 3. Okay. Now, how do we get this guy to say, I don't want these items to be arranged this way, I want these items to be arranged this way? We can use display. So display will help you to set a property that will tell these guys, don't be arranged like this, because what are we doing with this other space? Normally, how the website is structured in such a way that so from this end to this end is 100%. Sorry guys, let's just manage the writing. I just want to drive home the point. It's 100%. From this end to this end is 100% also. But from here to here, it's unknown. It's unknown pieces, unknown percentage. We don't know from here to here, because a web page can be very long and it can be very small. So we don't know the percentage from here to here. So aligning this like this will just make our website look very foolish, because you can just keep adding items and they will just keep aligning themselves by default on a vertical way. Right? So they will just keep aligning themselves like that, block upon each other block, just like that, and then your website will just look messy. But you want to style your website, you want to make sure your website looks beautiful. And for you to achieve that, you need to know what is the size of the width of my website. And the size is 100%. You might not know the pieces, but you will know the percentage. So if you know that the size is 100%, then rather than giving your div pieces, you just assign percentage to them. So if we say let's say this is 30%, this is 30%, and this is 30%. So we still have 10% left, and they can share that 10% for their margin and padding to have spaces in between the divs. I hope this is clear thus far, guys. I just want to drive home this point before we start coding it. I hope it's clear. Is that clear, guys? Is that clear? Do I need to just take that again? Okay, good. If it's clear, then we can move on. Sorry about that, Miracle. Okay, let's go ahead. So if that is clear, so I'm going to do this. I will, at the top of this, I will create another div. And this div is going to be the parent div of these guys. So this will be the parent div of these guys. Okay. So what I've done now is what I just explained. So I've added these three divs inside this guy that is their parent div. So we'll do Ctrl S and let's check our page. Did you see what just happened now? So now we have a guy that is taking charge of the three of them. We have a guy that is taking charge of the three of them. Now this guy has now, expanded himself and accommodated the three of them. So now we can have them like this. Because the guy has accommodated the three of them, we can then have them like this rather than having them, stay on a column. So, but why do we have this here? Why don't we just have it like what we wanted to have it? It's because we have said that this guy, we have given it a width of 33 pieces. So if we give this guy a width of 100 pieces, let's see what we will have. 100 pieces now. This is what we have. So now we have these guys spanning through the entire width of our website. But guys, looking at this too, we are not supposed to have the header and the H2 and the P tag like this. We wanted to have them in such a way that the H tag will come first and then the P tag, because if you see we have H2 and then we have P tag. Why is it showing that way? Maybe we are missing something, and what we are missing might just be the height. So if we give height and just say author and save, let's see what we will have. Okay, it didn't change. Let me just be sure. It didn't change. And now that will take us to classes. That will take us to classes. Please pay attention. So there's something called classes in HTML. So classes basically will help you to name your tags, and you can use that name to style your tag in order that you are not interfering with any other tag. All right. So we will just give the parent div, we'll give it a name and say, we have to say class, and then we'll give it a name and say section 1. Now this name is not what's this? Okay, so this name is not a default name, so you can actually change it anytime if you want. You can change it. So here in our style, rather than using div now, we will just use period and section 1. So we are calling this div now. We are calling this div here in our CSS, in our styling, and say we want to style this parent div, and the name of this parent div is section 1. So if the name is section 2, then we need to have section 2 here. And remember, classes are case sensitive. So if I use capital S here, I must use capital S here for this guy to understand that I am talking about this div. If not, it wouldn't make any difference. There will be no effect on your code. So you want to make sure that you are using the exact case that you use to name your div while styling. Very important. Classes are case sensitive. If I have capital letters here all through and I have small letters here, I am not referring to this guy. So I must refer to this guy the same way I refer to it here must be the same way I refer to it here, right? So, and then you see that I have this period sign here, or full stop sign as we call it, dot sign, right? So this sign is actually telling us that this is a class. So that's how to denote a class. We also get to ID. There's something we call ID. And then we denote ID with a hash sign, hash symbol, hash band. But here, we use the period to tell CSS that, oh, we are talking about a class. So let's save. Now we've given this guy and say your name, that is the guy, the parent div. We have given it a name and say your name is session 1. Remember, we have not named these other divs, we have not styled them. So let's refresh and see the look and feel of our CSS. Now our CSS has come back together, even though we have our parent tag spanning from spanning 100%. You can see that our CSS has come together. But if you look at it very well, you see that it's not looking the way we want it to look. The header tag has gone up, and then the paragraph tag is down. This is how we actually wanted it to look like originally, right? But it wasn't looking that way. But now that we've separated our classes by giving the parent tag a name, it has shifted. And now I'm very fast. Are we getting this, guys? Are we getting this? Are we understanding? I know I'm very, very fast. Are we understanding this? You can unmute yourself if you just want to say yes or something, or you want to ask a question. I will rewind if you want to ask a question. Okay. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Okay, the recording will be available for us, so we can rewatch. It will be available to us. Okay, so let's continue and let's go to our code now. Remember, I said that div will always take the maximum space available to it. So whether you say 100% or not, except to specify and say we want you to be 20%, 30%. But if you just write your div and leave it, it will take the whole space available, which is 100%. So, but now what we will do here is to use, since we've not started writing CSS fully, I will just use this and give it a width of 33 ps, or let's say 30% to be safe. I will give this one style. So this is inline styling I'm using, and then width of 33%. And then this other div, I will give it a style and width of 33%. Ctrl S. So we've given them 33%, 33%, 33% width. So now you see that because we have specified that you have to be 33%, each of them have now occupied 33%. Now, before now, what happened is that because these guys are div, like I said, because they are div, they take 100%. So they take their space, all the space that is allocated to them from here to here, from here to here, from here to here, even though they are inside their parent div, right? So, but for us to make sure that we have each of them staying where we want them to be, such that the 100% allocated to the parent div is able to pick all of them, then we need to use a width property inside each of the div. So we can either do it just the way we've done it here, or we can then give each of these div a name. right? We can give each of these div inside the section 1 div a name. So we can give this one a class name and call it something. Give this one a class name and call it something. Give this one a class name and call it something. Then we can then style it here. So that will give us more flexibility in styling it. But that we will do when we get to CSS. Okay. But here, what I want you to note here is that we've been able to align this thing horizontally the way we want to align it. By number one, giving our parent tag a name, which is section 1, and then giving each of our div, that is the child divs now, we give each of them a style and we keep them at 30% and say, you know what, as much as you know that you can take the whole space of 100%, please pick 30% and allow 30% for your brethren. So next thing I want us to do is, if you look at this, you can see that here we have this guy very close to the edge, and here we have this guy very far from the edge, and you know, this guy and this guy and this guy, and then they are not properly aligned. So what if we just, you know, put a bit of styling to the parent div and say, this parent div will say that the parent div here wants the items inside align item, it wants the align item to be centered, something like this. So it wants to align items to the center, okay? And justify content, we want it to be center also, okay? So here this is the parent divs trying to tell these guys, you know what, I want the item inside me to be aligned center and to be justified center. So let's refresh and see that there is a bit of movement, right? Now, why is it that we are not having it exactly where we want it to be? Is because we have not styled these other guys. So we need to also tell these guys that, hey, you need to move to the center. You need to move to the center. You need to move to the, because the content that is inside you has to be in the center. Remember that what we are seeing here, we are only seeing the content that is inside the div. Remember that each of this is a div, guys. Each of this is a div. Each of this is a div. So they are like bosses here. They are like bosses here. They are like bosses here. So if we try to, let me just do something here under this. Yep. So let me say border 2 pairs solid white. Okay, and refresh. Now you can see that this guy, I don't know if it's visible, guys. Can you see that? You can see this white here. So it's telling you that this is the space of this div. So as much as this is what we are seeing, these guys are inside a div. They are inside a container. So they are controlled by the container. So it's the container that will tell them what to do. They cannot tell the container what to do. So if, let's just stay on this guy here that we are trying to style. Sorry, the styling is going to be like this for now until we start using CSS and you enjoy the styling. But let's tell this guy to align items to the center, and let's refresh. And okay, so let's justify the justify the content. Justify content to the center. And refresh. Okay. Let's also give each of these div let's also give them border width. Sorry, yeah, border width. So 2 pieces solid white. And let's also give this guy, where is the last? This is the first. Okay. So let's also give this guy 2 pieces solid white. Div style is okay. What am I missing here? Style width is 3%. Okay. We're supposed to include our what we're styling for here. Yeah, but 2 pairs solid whites. Okay, yeah. So let's refresh and see what we have. Okay, so now we can see that we have each of these staying. So it's not that visible because so this one, it's overlapping to this one. But let's style this guy and just give it a bit of padding. Let's say padding 3 pairs. And then let's give it a margin. So no, before then I want us to see what that does. Okay, so what is padding? Padding is just to help. So it's just to help shift the elements that are inside the container. So now if you look at it, you see that the container, the container inside, that's the outer container, is showing differently. Okay, let's give that a different color. Let's give that a different color so that you can see it properly. Okay. So let's refresh. Okay, it will still be the same way because I've not colored this, so we need to color these ones. But that would take us a whole lot of time. But just look at this. You can see that we have, it's like saying there's a div saying on top of another div here. If we increase that padding, let's increase that padding to 5 pieces and refresh. All right. So you see that this is showing you that we have a div that is staying on top of another div. A div that is staying on top of another div here, right? So what this simply does is that it shifts, padding shifts the item inside the div, inside the container. It just shrinks the item, brings the item together. For instance, if we give this padding, let's give one of these padding, maybe the middle one. Yeah, let's give it padding, and let's just say 5 pairs, something like that, and refresh. So can you see that? So we are padding this guy. So you see that it has taken more, it has taken like 5 PS inside. 5 PS inside. So padding helps to just remove spaces inside, and then margin remove spaces outside. So if we say 5 PS margin here, margin 5 PS, and refresh. So you see, it takes the space outside. So that's what padding does. Margin does. Why padding takes the space inside. I know this is a lot of information, and the core of this is CSS, guys. Um, are we getting this at all? You need to watch this if possible, a few more times, But are we understanding? All I want us to take home today is what we've done here. This analogy is what we've done here. All right. What I want us to take is what we've done here. I want us to take the fact that number one, divs are block level elements and they take as much space as available to them, as allocated to them. They take as much space as you allocate to them. That is it. Number two, that each div, it's like a container that carries other elements inside. So you can have a div, and inside that div, you can have an image tag, you can have header tag, and you can have a paragraph text inside. Another thing I want you to take home is that if we have a div like this, like we've explained, and you add, and you say this is a parent div, and you add another div inside this div, if you add a second div, it will display like this. You had a third div, it will display this way, right? It will display this way. And like I said, we don't know the pieces from here to here. We don't know the percentage from here to here. But we know that from here to here in our web page is 100%. It's 100% in our web page. But this one can go as long as possible. We don't know where it goes. So you go to some web pages, you see that your web page can be as long as possible. But this to here is always 100%. So if we know that this to here is 100%, then we can use this that we know to style our web page. So rather than having our divs to display this way with the content in it, we can decide that our div should display in an horizontal format inside the parent div, which is what we did by using the display flex property. So you can have this here, have the next div here, and have the next div here. And what do? You simply give this maybe 33%, and give this 33%, and give this one 33%. So 33 is 99%. So the 1% we can use it to give them spaces for breathing. All right. So that being said, let me ask, is that clear? Do we understand thus far? Do we understand thus far? Is there a confusion somewhere? Is there something you want me to explain again? The heavens are silent.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, blessing. No, sorry.
I've been joining with another this thing, but I think you explained very well. The only thing that we need to watch to be able to understand.
All right.
For me, I'm going to go back and rewatch it and see if I
All
can
right.
understand it.
All right. Okay. So that said, we are going to call it a day today, and hopefully by tomorrow we'll be looking at forms in HTML. We'll look at forms and then we'll look at ID. So ID also works like the classes, but ID majorly we use that for JavaScript. Classes majorly we use that for CSS. But you can still use ID for CSS, but ID basically is for CSS. I mean for JavaScript when you have to get elements by ID. So hopefully by tomorrow we will do ID, and then we'll move to forms in CSS, and that will then introduce us properly to CSS, where we'll enter CSS and start doing proper styling. By God's grace, I want us to design a full web page section, like a section of a web page, hopefully by Monday, if God gives us a grace. At least from there, we'll start, seeing how we can style our website, have our nav bar, and we'll move from there. All right. I think we'll call it a day now. We have a few minutes for this call to end, so we'll call it a day now, and we continue from where we stop tomorrow. So do have a beautiful night rest, guys. Bye from my end.